Valence had had time to advance his plans of rebellion to any sufficient degree. Silus had thought the situation could have been more dangerous. After all, Septimius Severus, the current emperor's father, had started his rebellion from North Africa. But the Third Augusta, stationed in Numidia, had not been sufficiently persuaded at that stage to join Valens in revolt. Maybe they were loyal to Caracalla, who was always popular with the common soldier, or maybe they had not been offered a sufficiently large bribe and were holding out for a better offer. Whatever the case, when Marcellus arrived with his show of force, the Third Augusta had put up no resistance, and when he had arrested Valens, they had acknowledged Marcellus as the new governor without hesitation. Of course, it had been Silas's job to execute Valens, quietly, out of sight. Caracalla hadn't wanted any knowledge of the disloyalty to get out, in case it encouraged others at this fragile moment in his principate. So Silus had strangled him in his cell, held a tight cord around the man's neck while he tried to draw in air, while he gripped at the ligature, fingernails gouging bloody streaks into his skin, legs kicking, until, after an eternity, his struggles weakened, slowed, stopped. Silus had thrown the body to the floor, panting, and felt an irrational anger at the dead man. He didn't want to feel like this anymore, to do this anymore. The fear and anger and guilt and anxiety as he forced the life out of another human. He was done. And so he had turned his back and returned to Lipari, where Tituria waited in exile. The young girl, slowly growing up, who hated him as the murderer of her father and loved him as the man who had saved her life, as the only person left in the world who cared about her. It was a complicated relationship, but it had grown over the next few months. Not once did Silus miss the action or the adventure of his time in the Arcani, or even his job as a scout with the auxiliaries in northern Britannia. Although, of course, he missed his late wife and daughter profoundly, he didn't particularly miss the land of his birth. He had everything he needed on Lipari. Atius had quickly tracked him down, come to find him, to make sure his closest friend was well. He had stayed for some time, tired too, and wrestling with confusion about his faith and his place in the world. Lipari was a wonderful place to sit and think, and Atius had done plenty of that. Ultimately, though, the big Celtiberian was too much a man of action to stay long kicking his heels on a remote island. One day, he had announced that he was rejoining the Arcani. Not that either of them had ever officially left, but he had made up his mind. He was going back to Rome to report to Oclatinius to take on whatever was asked of him. Silus had begged him to stay. Atius had begged Silus to go with him. They had exchanged angry words, then apologies, then an embrace, and parted ways. Watching his friends sail away had left Silus more lonely than ever. But, though he had brooded for days, Tituria's cheerful and intelligent company, and the affection of Issa, Silas's little old dog that he had gifted to Tituria, had brought him out of his depression. He had settled into a calm routine, until he found that he was happier than at any time since he had lost his family. And now, Oclatinius had pricked that bubble of contentment, and all the joy and peace it had contained had dissipated into the atmosphere. "Atius, you complete arse," Silus thought. Then immediately felt guilty at the fact that his friend's plight had engendered pity only for himself. He sighed, picked up his cup of wine, and took a long swallow. It didn't taste nearly as sweet as it had yesterday. "Tell me everything," he said. Januarius, 213 AD. Atius really hated snow. He had grown up in Hispania, with its warm climate, and though he had seen plenty of it in his time serving with the auxiliaries in the north of Britannia,